All right, everybody, here we touch on a really important part of the impact report. And this was about the actual material that is being recycled by Joby at their assorted facilities. And a little nugget that we've touched on previously, but something that is really important to highlight is JB Straubel, of course, Tesla veteran who heads up Redwood Materials, partnered with Joby. And so in 2023, they were recycling about 1,000 pounds of Joby's batteries. Flash forward to 2025, and it was over 4,000 pounds. So it's a 3x in the amount of batteries that Joby is needing to recycle. And that should tell you something about, obviously, they continue to build more aircraft, but how much they're using the aircraft. And so something like this improvement is really, really impressive from what recycling can do for the business unit. And I think EVTL fan, you've done quite a bit of digging where this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of examples of how Joby is leveraging recycling throughout the business unit.
Yeah, I think this is a good example. In this report, you see Joby talking about the ability to reuse, assets. So the battery is expensive, everyone knows that, but to be able to deploy it and have functional use beyond just the S4 is really exciting because you can start to understand the economics a little bit better when you hear Joby talk about taking these batteries and then using them at the vertiports as storage for power. And it's really compelling. I think it also changes the unit economics of how much these things cost, and I also like that it allows you to see that Joby's thinking 2-3 steps ahead. So again, they are very frugal with what they do. They try to reuse things. And I know from an operational standpoint, it touches on more of the economics of how to make this a real business that makes money. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes, I think a big part of when we look at the life cycle, in this particular example, right, is we have the theme of sustainability and driving home that part of the Joby mission. But then at the end of the day, this is a business that is for profit and here to make money. And so when you see the batteries, of course, it's going to be a huge part of the cost for the aircraft initially. But we know that these airframes are going to be, lasting for, over a decade. So when you have the batteries being recycled, let's call it after 2 years' time, the aircraft's going to be paid off as you have to replace the batteries. But then a really unique thing happens is that once you replace the batteries, for all intents and purposes, that is a brand new airplane. But the cost is just the batteries and the labor to replace them. And as we've seen some of the really, genius engineering of the Joby battery packs and battery modules, they just plug directly into the top of the wing section. And so it's extremely efficient and easy to be able to do these swaps. It is essentially plug and play. And so when you look at that type of leverage across the aircraft, you have a plane that you could pay off in 2 years, and then maybe essentially you get a new aircraft for, let's call it 20% of the cost of a one that comes off the factory line. Oh my goodness, the economics that go straight to the bottom line in terms of the business, in terms of profit, downstream from that, from the air taxi side of things, not even getting into what that does for the economies of scale. Really impressive for Joby. And I think as we look at this impact report, we are seeing more and more of how sustainability is actually going to end up being extremely profitable for Joby in the end.
Yeah, and just one last thing, I think it also helps in terms of like airports electrification to be able to have a story that talks about how the load balancing, drawing all that current from these airports, it seems like it would make it easier to want to roll the dice with building a vertiport. When you have this optionality that the demand on power can be mitigated somewhat by having these old batteries sitting there as power cubes that allow you to do that. So again, 2-3 steps ahead. Sounds like they're doing everything they can to make it easy to say yes.
Great point. And as you think about, Joby continues to play 3D chess, and to what you just highlighted, imagine what that looks like in the future, again, as economies of scale, and we start to scale more and more aircraft, meaning there'll be more and more battery swaps. Wouldn't that be a nice incentive for XYZ vertiport in XYZ location, that we can just install a battery system, a battery backup that, yes, Joby would leverage as a part of charging their aircraft, but also as a battery backup for the entire airport, or let's say the airport and neighboring hangars or some other things. And so what Joby is going to be able to do with the aircraft, but also infrastructure and leveraging these batteries is really impressive. So great points, and looking forward to diving in deeper in the future, and hopefully maybe even see some new partnerships coming out of it as well.